At least I have a microphone where I can fight back. You people don't. The Tea Party people are incredible people. These are people that work hard and they love the country, and then they get just beat up all the time by the media. It's disgusting. And you will be surprised how big you are. You don't know how big you are. You don't know the power that you have. I mean it.
That was then candidate Donald Trump nearly a decade ago in the summer of 2015, courting the Tea Party vote in the 2016 Republican primary. Trump's combative style appealed to large swaths of the Republican electorate, continues to do so, especially those of the Tea Party movement back then who saw no value in compromising with Democrats, even with some of their fellow Republicans. Our next guest argues in order to heal the partisan wounds inflamed by Trump and the Tea Party, the United States must further embrace partisanship. Let's bring in Professor of History and Public Affairs at Princeton University, Julian Zelizer. He's the author of the new book titled In Defense of Partisanship. Professor, it's great to have you back at the table with us.
Thanks for having me.
I would add in a word that you repeat many times in the book, which is responsible partisanship. So what does that look like for people we were just discussing, kids in particular who grew up in this age of Trump where it's all about partisanship and combativeness and insults and grievance? What does responsible partisanship look like to you?
It's partisanship with guardrails, meaning we've had a hyper partisanship of the last 2 or 3 decades where I try to trace it to the Republican Party, where any limitations on what you can do, what procedures are fair game for partisan war, everything is on the table. That's not responsible partisanship. So you need leaders that accept boundaries. You need certain procedures that are insulated from this kind of attack. And then you can have robust parties that reflect the differences of the country and help operate politics in a very fragmented system of government.
So it's a great idea on paper, but you also need the actors who can behave the way that behavior is required to carry this out. It appears we're headed in a direction away from that. So what do you do about the human element of this?
Well, I'm glad I'm a historian and I'm not the politician, but I do call for a new kind of leadership. And I think ultimately voters are going to be the ones who apply the pressure. And they're going to have to send signals that certain kinds of leaders who don't abide by any kind of guardrails are ultimately not good for the party, not good for the democracy. But it will come down to the ballot box. I don't have a magic solution. I try to outline what kinds of leaders we need, removing certain kinds of procedures like the debt ceiling, which I think have become dangerous tools for the parties, and a few more recommendations.
So let's go through a couple of those recommendations. They are including expanding the size of the House of Representatives, eliminating the filibuster in the Senate, and then 2 on how campaigns are funded, suggesting that there needs to be a public finance system for Congress, and overturning the Citizens United ruling, which, of course, basically allows unlimited money into these campaigns. So walk us through a little bit as to why those matter.
Well, the campaign finance is important. I think if we have a system that is just bundled toward big contributors and big contributions, you have a bigger disconnect between the parties and voters, and people have a partisan system where they feel isolated from it. And I think encouraging small donations, really continuing to try to expand the base of who gives money is actually a healthy way to integrate citizens into the party. The filibuster, eliminating, reforming it, as we have done many times in American history, it has become a powerful weapon, not of bipartisanship. It's actually a tool to create gridlock. So I think reforms are very useful. The debt ceiling is now just a very dangerous mechanism that the parties, that the Republicans have used to threaten to send the nation into default over budget disputes. And so I think reforms can take some of these away. And those are a couple that I talk about.
In terms of partisanship, what do we do about the following? The Speaker of the House is from Louisiana. New Orleans, Louisiana, during Hurricane Katrina, was basically saved by the federal government of the United States of America throwing money at New Orleans. The Speaker of the House, within the last 48 hours, has said whatever help is thrown to Southern California, Los Angeles County, we've got to watch out how they spend their money because they've been foolish in spending their money. And basically saying they were basically blamed for the fires that were wind-whipped 90-mile-per-hour winds. What do we do about partisanship that deep that destructive, that damaging?
Well, there you're not talking just about partisanship. You're talking about the Republican Party, and you're talking about the Speaker of the House in particular and the caucus. And so one answer is that Democrats have to use their muscle in the next 2 years leading into the midterms to check that. And they have to remain disciplined. They have to remain united, as they did on the budget battle, to keep the budget funded. And they are going to be the principal weapons or barriers to that kind of politics in the next few years. So their partisanship by Democrats is actually going to be quite important. In the very short term, in the next few months, hopefully the political pressure will overcome that kind of action.
So let's follow your argument down the road, Professor. What would, in a few years from now, potentially, if we can end up in this place of responsible partisanship, how much more efficient would the government be?
Well, you can look at great moments in American history. You don't get a Ronald Reagan, you don't get an FDR without strong Republican Party, a strong Democratic Party. So a party that's strong, that's smart, that's responsible can produce great leaders or great candidates in the next election cycle. A strong party, as I was trying to suggest in the short term, can become a principal check on a very aggressive president, on a very aggressive use of presidential power. Those are just two kind of goals. And finally, strong parties can actually reflect, debate, and negotiate some of the real differences that we have in the country over questions from voting rights to reproductive rights to the budget and more. So in the next few years, if we had two parties that were strong but responsible, that's the kind of politics we can have, as we had in much of American history going all the way back to the founding.
We can hope. The new book, In Defense of Partisanship, is on sale now. Author and professor of history and public affairs at Princeton University, Julian Zelizer. Thanks so much, Professor. Good to see you.
Thank you.